Hello, everyone. Welcome to Move More, Worry Less. I'm your host, Paige Festa, the founder and designer at 13 Fit Apparel. March is Women's History Month, and today's guest is definitely going to be making history. Her name is Angel Joy Flores. She's a trans barbell athlete, and she was on season 6 of Queer Eye. On this episode, she shares her story and the challenges of being a trans barbell athlete. I am so honored to have her on today, and I don't want to waste time with this intro telling you what's going to happen, so let's just dive right into the episode. Enjoy, guys. Today, I have Angel Joy Flores with me. She is a barbell athlete. She was on season 6 of Queer Eye, and if you haven't watched her episode, it's so good. So Angel, if you want to introduce yourself, give us a little bit about who you are and what you do now, and then we'll kind of backtrack into your journey.
Absolutely. So, of course, my name is Angel Flores. I go by Archangel as well. I am a transgender barbell athlete and activist. Also, you can say advocate if you really wanted to. So my work is kind of like in different sects right now because I'm just like so scattered all over the place. So I do a lot on the athlete side, of course, in my own training, trying to fight for not only my own rights, but also just for, to put my name in the history books and to chase excellence like all athletes do. On the social media side, I really like push out content that's really supposed to kind of mirror the like motivational, like kind of bro content that like we get for a lot of like, average gym goers. And like, I want it to be like, hey, look at me, this is what I'm doing, you can do it too, right? Just like so many other people get throughout Instagram. And of course, like general stuff, like sharing my thoughts, sharing new topics, sharing legislation, stuff like that. And of course, on the activist side, my big plan as I move through this like crazy new, strange new life I have, is I want to link activists on the ground with the kind of like larger name corporations, essentially. So like I have been building little connections here and there with activists on the ground here in Texas, and then reaching out through social media to other activists as well, and kind of help facilitate the conversation between what needs to be done on the local level and what can be done on like the corporate marketing advertisement level. So we can like better protect people and better open up avenues for everybody to play sports.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for this conversation. I feel what you're doing is so incredible and so important. And I'm so glad that you have the platform to do that. But I wanted to backtrack a little bit into your story and your journey to kind of bring us to where you are now. So I'm going to ask like a 2-part question and you can answer it however you want. But I would love to hear, number one, about how you got into fitness and what your journey on the fitness side of everything was, and then also your journey with your transition.
Absolutely. So my transition and my fitness are kind of interlinked even as like a young kid. So I was pushed into sports by my dad when I was really, really young. And as I grew up, it was kind of always this feeling of like, something doesn't feel right. I don't quite fit in. I don't feel like I have a place among like all my friends, my guy friends. I don't want to play sports. I want to sit in the grass and pull the flowers out and look at how pretty the flowers are. I remember when I was 6, I saw my mom walking around in like a big sleep shirt and like some like small shorts, and as she was going to bed, and I was like, oh, I want to dress like that. And I walked around the house for like 2 days before my dad was like, is that how boys dress? And I was like, I don't know, but I guess not, right? And like, it's not anybody's fault, right? We didn't have the language to articulate that I had something else that I needed, right? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of just growing up understanding that, hey, I don't feel comfortable with my body. I don't feel comfortable with how people see me, but I can't exactly place what that is. So my outlet throughout most of my life is actually sports. I played as many sports as possible up until about 10 years old, before I hit about 11 years old and really latched onto football. I was never really like the big kid or like the kid that was just absolutely demolishing everybody. I was just kind of the person that, like I feel like I had talent and it needed to be fostered, and I had to wait a little bit until it could really bloom. So I got to high school. I had a coach who really, really loved me and really, really like brought out the best in me, and also taught me that like it's not about, what you're born with. It's about how you train your body and how your body changes, right? So like finding that new comfort in kind of this strength space and to finding new comfort in training my body was just a huge step for me as a person. Um, Following that, after football, I was kind of using my fitness and strength and my like bodybuilding style training to cope with the fact that I was completely uncomfortable with my body, like completely uncomfortable. I could not look in the mirror. I have a lot of mirror selfies that were trying to make like force myself to appreciate myself in the mirror, right? To see that that I'm hot, that I'm ripped, that I'm just like absolutely best person I need to be. But I couldn't figure out why it was never enough. So I spent 2 years of college just completely like 2 hours in the gym every single day, cardio every single day, lifting every single day, trying to just carve out the best me, and never quite reaching the goal that I needed. Right. Mm-hmm. So going into 2019, I was listening to a podcast running on home. I moved up to Austin to go to college at UT, and I was driving home to San Antonio, which is about an hour drive. So it's always like perfect time for a podcast, right? So I'm kind of just driving along mindlessly, listening to one of my favorite podcasts, and one of the girls actually comes out as trans on the podcast. And she's just kind of explaining her life, that she's never fit in, that she's always had this kind of like general discomfort with her body. And as I'm listening, I'm like, oh, wait, this sounds kind of familiar. And it's not like, I had a fellow trans person in the industry say recently that like, it's not like that person was like relating to us. It was like, it's not that person, hold on. It's not that we were relating to that person. It's that that person was really relating to us, right? Like, it's not like I found my story in somebody else. It was like somebody else was speaking my story, right? And that's what it felt like. Like it was like instantly, as soon as the question was asked of, have you just been trapped in a male body your entire life? It was like, boom. And like that click and the egg breaks and you are completely like, it just all starts. And it's honestly like a really kind of crazy instant process, right? Because all of a sudden you start to find the language to articulate like, oh, I don't like being called he. Oh, I don't actually enjoy like having my legal name used, right? Like I don't quite enjoy wearing the clothes that I wear, and like I don't quite enjoy seeing the body that I have, right? And it's kind of like taking this new ownership of, oh, I need to find a new identity entirely instead of trying to fit myself into an identity that was given to me, right?
Right.
And I think that's the most important. And it wasn't until I asked that question that I truly felt like that, like I truly opened up, right? That I had truly opened up to the possibilities of like the rest of my life, you know? I think growing up, I was always just like thinking about tomorrow and never thinking about the future, because I didn't feel like I was going to make it to like, further than that. Right. It was always like, okay, I made it to high school. I don't know if I'm going to make it to college. I'm just so depressed. I'm upset all the time. I can't stand it. But then like finding the question, right? And then finding a new identity and having people address you how you want to be, and having somebody use your name for the first time, right? And truly smiling because somebody's used your name, a name that like you've chosen for yourself, right? It was just a new opening of possibilities for me, just a new crazy world of, oh my God, like I could live the rest of my life. Like I can actually plan for the rest of my life. And with that comes the training, right? It wasn't when I was in college, I joined the UT Olympic weightlifting team, and I was always just like competing to the next competition, but I never really looked past that, right? Mm-hmm. But as soon as I asked the question, as soon as I started taking ownership of myself, it was like finding, oh, I want big things. I want to be a champion. I want to chase excellence. I want to become like somebody that everybody can look up to. And that truly opened up the possibilities of like what I can do in the strength world and what I can do in the training world as well.
Wow. Like so powerful. I'm curious. So when you're listening to this podcast and you're having this realization. What was your experience internally? Like, was it relief? Was it, I feel like there's so many emotions that would probably go along with that. I'm curious as to what that felt like emotionally, physically. I'm sure you had some kind of, sensation.
I think the first sensation was like I was driving along and she said something about like um like always hating being around the sport guys, but always feeling the need to. And I said something out loud like, "Oh, I feel you, girl." And then I was like, "Wait, what?" And then like I started listening more and more, and like it's just the internal. I think it starts with fear.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely starts a little bit of fear of like, this is crazy. Like there's no way, right? But I think like just something inside me. I always explain it like my wires have always been crossed,
Mm-hmm.
and then like for that brief moment, as she's talking about her experiences and as she's relating to my experiences, it's like, oh, the wires becoming slightly uncrossed, and it just clicks, and you just know it's right, and you just know, like, and that's what like I hear from a lot of my friends is that like once it clicks, like you just know, and that's it. And that's why I tell a lot of people like, if you don't feel that like click, if you don't like do some small thing, like have somebody say a different name for you or like use a different pronoun for you, and you don't feel that click, then you're not trans. And like that, and that's just how it is, right? There's no like spreading of being trans. It's not like a contagious disease. We're not trying to give it to people. Like, no, like we're just born this way.
Right.
And until we're given the language to articulate that, like that we have been born this way, it's just like living in a fishbowl, and you're just trapped, and you don't realize that you're in a fishbowl.
Right.
And then once somebody comes in and gives you the language, they break the fishbowl, and you're like, oh my god, like the rest of the world exists.
Right.
And it goes further into the hormones, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, it's like it's crazy.
Something you said that, and I'm probably not going to say it exactly the way you just said it, but it was so beautifully said. But you were saying how like now you're able to live with an identity that you chose rather than an identity like society and life has put you into. You completely didn't say those words, but like the concept. You said it much better, but such a powerful statement. And I would love to know more about your transition. So you have this moment that you're like, holy shit, like,
Yeah,
this epiphany. I don't know if that's the right word, but
it
so
is the
then,
right word.
so then what happens next? How are you able to, what was your experience like? How were you able to really live your truth and transition and like make that happen for yourself?
Luckily, I had a lot of resources at UT.
Yeah.
The University of Texas has like a really, really comprehensive mental health program and
Wow.
gender affirmation program as well, which is really, really great.
Wow.
So my first step was, like talking to like my girlfriend Katya, who we were just like, we had just started dating at the time, and that was a whole like, like we're gonna take this step by step, Dave. Okay. So from there, it's kind of like doing the small things, like I'm gonna put this bra on under my like regular boy clothes and just see how it feels running around like all day, right? And like I'm gonna do like small little things like paint my nails or like do my eyebrows or just stay shaved the entire time, that like kind of like test for me, is this what I need, right? And that's what I tell everybody is like, go and do the small tests that nobody's really going to notice, then and that's going to help you kind of figure out like, okay, do I feel comfortable here, do I feel comfortable there? And it's just learning yourself, right? Like you're just going and doing, like we all do it automatically, we're just taking the extra step now. I sat on it for a year, honestly. Like I went through counseling, I went to the counseling through UT, I talked to a psychiatrist, I talked to a psychiatrist outside of the university. And it was just trying to figure out like, is this the right path? Like, is our hormones and full transition the right path for me? And like I think what I'm the most grateful for with those counseling sessions is that I walked in and nobody ever like asked me if I thought I was trans. They just asked me what I needed,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they like every day I would walk in, and the first thing they would ask is like, do you need anything at this current moment? Okay, do you need anything in the future? Okay, now let's talk about what you think you need, right? And as I took the time to explore what I needed as a person, and took the time to recognize the signs throughout my daily life of like, I need a bigger change than just a name change, or just like changing my face, or just changing my hair. I need a bigger change. Some of that did come with anxiety. I did have a lot of anxiety attacks throughout that process, because like I would question myself, and then question myself again, and then the questions just keep going. And I have really bad ADHD on top of that, so my mind is just always racing. And so it's a long process. And like I said, I sat on it for a year. It took me a long time to even work up the courage to like call the Kind Clinic here in Austin and be like, hey, I need to set up an appointment for hormones. Like that, just to say those words is a huge accomplishment for any trans person. And I got really lucky, because as soon as I called, they were like, hey, we're booked out in Austin until December. And this is in like March. And like, cause like there's people seeking treatment for it here in Austin, because it's so like accessible here in Austin. That's what I'm so grateful for, is it's so accessible here. But anyways, they were booked out until December. And what they told me was, however, we have a clinic down in San Antonio that's opening next week, so you should go. You can be the first patient at this clinic. And I was like, are you joking? And I went down there, and they like, I walked in, and it was like they had just set everything up. Everything was still scattered. They had like notebooks out instead of laptops, and they were doing everything by hand. But I was walked back there, and again, it wasn't like questioning me if I knew I was trans. It was asking me what I needed, right? The doctor sat me down. She looked at me and she said, what do you think you need? And I was like, I thought I was coming here to ask you that. Like, what is I thought you're supposed to tell me that. Isn't that your job? But like I said, like it's not a question at that point, like if you've asked the question and things click, then you know. And when you know, you know. Right. So I got the hormones day of, I got the prescription for the hormones day of. I had to sit on it for about 6 months because of COVID. Because I actually wanted to get some fertility preservation done, just because I would like to have kids at some point, and that would be really awesome. So because of COVID, I had to kind of sit on that one until about, let me think, July 2020. Got the preservation done, got the hormones in my hands, and it was like, well, okay, I'm just gonna do it. Wow. And I remember it was like hours. It was like within a couple hours, I was walking to work. There were these like gorgeous orange flowers next to the sidewalk that I walk past like every single day. But that day they were just like glowing orange, so bright. Like the colors were just so amplified. And throughout the day, it's kind of just looking around, and like there's like a fog that's being lifted off of your brain, like the wires are being actively uncrossed. So colors get brighter, smells get stronger. You're like laughing more, you're smiling bigger. Like it's instant. Like you automatically feel it. And I remember coming home and just like giving my girlfriend a hug and being like, oh my God, like I feel it. Like I feel better. Yeah. And from there, it just takes off. Like you start seeing the changes in your skin, like the skin gets softer, hair gets, gorgeous. You don't get any more acne. You kind of just get all these like wonderful things. And then over time, you start to see the curves. You start to see the muscle mass drops. Like, I was power cleaning 100 kilos, the day before my hormones. The day after I started my hormones, I couldn't throw it around anymore. It was like instant. Like I could not. Wow. Like I threw it up and I caught it and I immediately like collapsed under it. And I was like, I feel awful. And so from there, it's week to week of like, you're seeing the positive changes in your skin and your hair, your curves are starting, like your body's starting to change, and you're feeling the muscle just like drop and drop and drop. And every week it was like, okay, 90 kilos is starting to feel like 100, 80 is starting to feel like 90, 80 is starting to feel like 100. Oh my God, wow. I feel like garbage. And so even now, like going back to get up to like 100 kilos, I feel pretty like, I'm
Right.
heavier now, so it's a little easier, but um, it's still a pretty good struggle. And it's like, it was a big mental switch to go from like, oh, I feel like I can throw anything off the ground. And then like 2 days later, like, oh, I feel weak. I understand what this feels like now.
Yeah.
Um, Appetite drops. I have a lot of trouble eating, actually. I think it's
Really?
because the hormones want my body to be like you. And I'm like 220 pounds and like 5'9", and I need to eat. So I will get halfway through meals and just stop. Like I will like just instantly get not hungry anymore. Sometimes I will go full days without eating because I just won't get hungry. And I'll try and sit down and eat, and I'll struggle through like a Rice Krispie treat. And I'm like retching in the middle of the Rice Krispie treat. So I'm like, I can't get this down because I don't want to eat it. Um,
Wow.
and basically with that is where like most of the struggle with training comes right now, is that I feel like I get like no testosterone stimulation, right? So I get no hunger stimulation. So when
Oh.
I go and train, if I'm not getting any like significant volume, right? So if I'm just hitting singles, right? So like last week was comp week. I hit singles at the beginning of the week. And then as comp got closer, not only was my like volume going down, of course, if I'm resting, my anxiety is moving up because comp's coming up, and my
Mhm.
appetite is dropping because both of those things are coming together.
Right.
So I'm sitting at meals and I know I have to eat like 3,000 calories to keep up my weight for the meet, but I'm staring at this plate of my favorite pasta and I don't want to eat it because I'm not hungry. And
Right.
I'll take a bite and I'll just instantly want to gag because it's just not, it doesn't want to go down. Um,
Wow.
like eating is a huge struggle with me.
Wow. That's really interesting. And I mean, obviously for an athlete, food is super important because that is your
Mm-hmm.
fuel. And if I mean, I'm saying the obvious, but wow, that's crazy. That's
Yeah.
so crazy that it's so difficult to eat. So, I mean, that seems it's like you have all these positive things happening, right? Like the hormones are changing you and you're feeling, all these positive ways, but then you walk into the gym and it's like how are you slash how did you cope with that, how your body's changing in the gym versus outside of the gym?
Well, I switched sports. um, well, like to be honest, like I was still training Olympic weightlifting up until about 6 months in. And
Okay.
I went from like a 96 kg snatch to like a maybe an 82 within those
Mhm.
6 months before I like completely stopped like training any sort of max like Olympic weightlifting. I still do the movements, but it's more just to keep up the technique and like
Right.
make sure that's still in my arsenal. But like around December of 2020, I got 6 months in, the numbers just kept dropping, and I kept coming into the gym like, why the hell am I still doing this? Like, so USAW doesn't offer like an intermediary competition period. Basically, like they tell you, okay, spend 1.5 to 2 years on the hormones, and we'll see you in 2 years.
Okay.
And then you don't really like, if you go to a competition, you'll still be seen as a male. You'll still be seen as like, it'll be like a whole thing. And I was like, I don't want to do that. Like it's just not, I don't want to be dysphoric on the competition stage, you know? And I don't want to be competing as a male, first of all.
Right.
so so I got 6 months into that period and I was like, I'm sick of the sport. Like I've been coming in and training it every single day. I'm not seeing any positives. I'm not seeing any growth. I don't feel like I'm doing anything. I need a change. And that's when USA Powerlifting released their MX category in
Okay.
response to JC suing them in 2019. And for her right to competition, which they still haven't given. Um, and so my coach contacted me and was like, my current coach, Finney, contacted me and was like, hey, you are an athlete. You need to compete. I see you coming in here and like working your ass off every day and you're still dying. Like you're still hating it every single day. And I think that while you like train in this intermediary period until you go back to weightlifting, why don't you compete in powerlifting and just
Mhm.
compete in the separate category and at least put your name out there before you go back to a competition that means something to you, right? And I was like, sure, let's do it. And to me, it was like, let's make change from the inside. USAPL has a horrible history of being transphobic. Let's make some change and show people that I have a right to exist in these spaces too.
Right.
So that's how I've been kind of training for the last year, yeah, year and a few months.
Yeah.
A lot of powerlifting, a little bit of weightlifting, a little bit of cardio in there, but it's been a big focus to just like try and maintain my strength. And then
Mhm.
now, like now that I've reached kind of a baseline and now that I can start to increase my numbers again, to really push that and to see like where I can actually get right now.
Right. So I kind of want to backtrack into what the competition world looks like being a trans athlete. Just I don't know that it's, at least for me, I don't know much about that, and I would love for you to be able to educate me and listeners on what that looks like. How What are the challenges with competing? I know that you had the competition this weekend, and I saw you post on social media about what happened at the competition. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that and kind of what
Yeah.
that whole world looks like and what it should look like.
Yeah, of course, of course. So essentially, the big fear with trans athletes and trans women in particular is that there is some sort of an advantage within our bodies that will naturally allow us to automatically be stronger, faster, better athletes than cisgender women, right? So what the argument is that either we don't go on hormones, which is not true. We most of us, especially the athletes, go on hormones. And the second argument is that the hormones don't take away everything, right? That the hormones leave behind some sort of like residual, like male biology, right? However, like did you have a question?
No, I was
Okay, cool.
listening. Yeah, no, I was actively listening.
Gotcha, gotcha. However, as all trans women know, and as I know through my body,
Mhm.
as the hormones take effect, especially after a year and a half, 2 years, the body basically wants to be completely cisgender. Like it wants to get you down to those levels. So like my test got down to 20 for a good portion of time there. And like I've stuck at that for a long time because of hormone blockers, because of the natural blocking effect of estrogen and progesterone. So essentially keeping tests low that long and keeping estrogen high that long puts your body in a state of, okay, let's drop muscle mass. Let's start to slowly drop bone density over time. And let's start to shrink tendons and ligaments in the hands, the feet, the body. So my hands have gotten a little smaller. My feet have gotten a little smaller. I've actually gone from an 11 and a half men's to an 11 and a half women's.
Wow.
Yeah, depending on the shoe company, because some companies make them real narrow and it's really hard. But like in my Vivo Barefoots, for example, like I went from an 11 and a half to in men's to 11 and a half women's.
Wow.
So like the hormones do a lot. And
Mhm.
as I train and as I move, I can feel that in my body that like, especially because I'm training next to cisgender peers who oftentimes are pushing themselves just as hard as I am, right? I'm not like outperforming these women. I'm heavier than these women, right? So I can lift a little bit more weight, mass moves mass, but pound for pound, there's a lot of girls around me and a lot of girls around me at competition that are so much stronger than I am, right? And that's what a lot of people fail to realize is that like because the hormones have brought me down to these levels now, I'm working just as hard, if not harder, to keep up with my cisgender peers. To I'm in the gym every day. Like I force feed myself every day. I'm putting the volume in whenever I can. I'm doing the extra technique work whenever I can. And so like with the competition side, it's kind of like this argument of, oh, you have an advantage. We're not going to let you compete, even though you put the work in this whole time. Right. They're automatically banning us just on the account of like, we think you have an advantage. So we're not even going to give you a chance. Right.
Right.
Problem being, if there was some sort of like trans domination of sport, it would have happened already, because we've been allowed to compete in the Olympics since 2004,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Essentially, like there's this fear that we're going to come in and create these unbeatable records and just absolutely obliterate women's sports, when in reality, like, if we come in, we're probably just going to create an even larger renaissance of women's sports that's already starting right now, right?
I love that.
I'm sorry if I'm getting like all over the place. Like,
No,
there's just so
this
much to
is,
talk about.
no, it's amazing. And I love it. I want you to have this platform to talk. So keep going. I love it.
Gotcha. For sure. For sure. So essentially, that's where I kind of come in, is I explain that, hey, the hormones do a lot, and the hormones kick our ass, and the hormones bring us down to really, really low levels. If you look at a lot of the transgender athletes who have been on hormones the longest, so if you look at Chloe Johnson, it's not like she's out here destroying the men in all of her CrossFit workouts. She's working just as hard as all the women to keep up, right? I have a lot of friends in the powerlifting world who have to work just as hard to keep up with the other strong women in their gym. And so I kind of work to illustrate that, while bringing the awareness to the competition side, and saying that everybody should be allowed to chase championship, right? Everyone should be allowed to chase excellence. Everyone should be allowed to compete in so-called like fair competition, right? And through that, we're not only creating opportunities for trans athletes, but we're creating opportunities for all athletes, right? Because if we're allowed to compete, that means that other athletes can feel inspired, and feel more inspired to be their true selves on the platform, right? When I'm at every meet, it's not like I'm sitting alone and quiet. When I was at my competition this weekend, I was uplifting every single athlete around me, because I'm just as happy for every single athlete to be with me as they are for me to be there as well, right? And I'm lifting alongside women that are honestly so much stronger than I am, and can kick my ass any day. And these same women are coming back to me after the competition and saying, "I want you to chase me, and
Yeah.
I want you to beat me," right? It's that championship mindset of like, hey, I'm gonna win one day, and then somebody's gonna come behind me and win again, and I'm gonna lose, and I'm gonna have to start over, right? It's that cycle, and all we want is to be a part of that cycle, right? The win, lose, try again, win, lose, try again, just like we have been for the past like 40 years, right? If you look back, there have been dozens of trans women and trans men who have competed in different sports throughout the decades, and nobody has dominated their sport. They've made their mark. They've also made their controversy, of course, but they made their mark, and then they moved on, right? And sport didn't end. My question for everybody is, isn't that the truth for everything, right? Isn't that the truth for every other athlete? That I'm going to come in, I'm going to make my mark. Somebody else is going to come in and make their mark, which is going to be a bigger mark than mine. And I'm going to have to start over. And that's just how this works, right?
Yeah.
And all I'm saying is that we should be looking at athletes not for their biology, but for their skill and their talent, right? Like, we should be looking at athletes. We should be looking at athletes at the top level and saying it's not about their hormones, right? How many women in powerlifting are pound for pound stronger than all of those elite men? Like, how many women in powerlifting get higher scores, or in weightlifting get higher scores than men all the time, right? Because it's not about their hormones, right? It's about the skill and the drive and the effort and the talent they've put into their sport, right? When you look at the top level, sure, when you get to numbers, the men will outperform the women, right? When you get to numbers. However, those women are still outperforming the rest of the population, right? So is it testosterone, or is it skill and talent, right? And that's where the question lies, is that should we be valuing athletes as groups, as just groups of estrogen and testosterone, or should we be valuing athletes on the individual level and looking at them and saying, okay, you have your identity, right? This is how your body works. Let's come together and make a decision together and see where you fit.
So in an ideal world, what would competition look like?
It's hard, right? Because I could sit here and say, we can go just off hormones, right? let's set like a hormone baseline for the masculine or male category, or the M category, and set like a testosterone baseline for the female category, right? But that would be lazy as well, because I have a friend, Alicia Weigel. She was born intersex. She was sterilized at birth. However, she has an androgen insensitivity. So even though she would have lived her life with high testosterone, she would have developed completely normally as a cisgender female, because her body just simply doesn't take that testosterone into account, right?
Okay.
So taking sport and putting just hormones into it is a lazy way, right? Because like we have people that exist that don't have advantages over other athletes. They don't have some sort of like unbeatable crazy body. They're just normal people that with different bodies, right? So what I see sport as developing into is kind of, like I said, this like individual level analysis, where we have to take each athlete and, yes, use categories, but use things like committees and teams and organizations that can work together to like create an individual profile for that athlete. So we know where that athlete can sit, who they can compete with, and what their identity is, right?
Yeah.
And how that, and what that athlete brings to the sport, right? Because every athlete brings something of value to the sport, whether it be their own participation or some change on a grander level, right? We should be looking at every athlete individually and seeing what they can bring to the sport, rather than just like throwing a blanket over everything and saying like you're either here or there.
Right. You say the word, or you use the term cisgender a lot. Can you define that?
Absolutely. So if you are a cisgender person, it means that your identity is congruent with the body you were born with, right?
Okay.
So the body you were born with is exactly the same as the gender you identify as, meaning that if you're born a woman, born in a female body, you identify as a woman, you are a cisgender woman, right?
Okay.
If you're born in a male body, you identify as a male, cisgender male, right?
Okay.
For transgender individuals, that would mean that either there's multiple definitions. The simplest is you are incongruent with the body you were born with, right? But some others would expand it to include like you are actively transitioning between, or you are actively moving somewhere else on the spectrum, right? I kind of keep it to like that open, like you're just incongruent, because it keeps the community large and it keeps everybody like together, and you know, like we should all be together and not putting ourselves in little bubbles, right?
Yeah.
But it varies. Let's see, other terms that I think will be important. When I talk about gender dysphoria and gender euphoria, that's kind of like the feeling that we get when we are affirmed in our gender, right?
Okay.
So gender euphoria is when we feel affirmed. When somebody uses my name, Angel, somebody uses she, her pronouns for me, I feel affirmed in that. If I get beaten in a competition, I get gender euphoria from that, because I feel affirmed that somebody had beaten me, right? Gender dysphoria is the opposite. That's when somebody uses either, like for me, it would be like he, him pronouns. For me, it would be using my other name, my old name, my dead name. That would give me anxiety, discomfort, depression, stuff like that. And that all comes together and works against each other.
Right. Thank you so much for doing that. I think the language is very important, because even in the beginning, when you were talking about when you had your epiphany, you never had like language to put to what you were feeling. You had an Instagram live fairly recently, and on it, you said, "There's no one way to be feminine." And that has been in my head since you said it. I just think that is such a powerful statement on so many levels. I mean, how many times are we told what we should look like, especially as an athlete? I can't tell you the number of things people have said to just me, like, don't get too skinny, don't get too shredded, you don't want your arms to be too big, or like, and I'm like, who are you to tell me what I should look like? And I would love to hear your journey with that.
Yeah, of course. Basically, when trans people educate and when trans people live their truth, what we're saying isn't that like you shouldn't be male or female, or you shouldn't be this or that. It's that there are infinite possibilities, and infinite identities, right? It's simple biodiversity, right? There's infinite different ways for the brain to work, right? And there's infinite different ways for our bodies to work. And there's infinite different ways that our brains and our bodies come together and the wires cross. And there's infinite ways that that could go wrong and we can end up in different bodies, right? And there's millions of ways that that can go right, and we can end up elite athletes who are perfect in every single way, right? And so with that, I encourage people, like, when you move out, and or not move out, when you move through the world and when you go to stores and you look at yourself in the mirror, don't look at the mirror, look at you. Like, look at yourself in the mirror. What do you need? Like I said, what do you need?
Mm-hmm.
Right? What makes you comfortable? My own journey with that is very much like taking the small steps. Like, do I need to wear a bra today? Do I need to wear leggings today? Do I need to take my pill today? Do I need to go get my hormone implant today? Right? Are those things that I need to keep me living my best life, right? To keep my quality of life at its highest and at its best, right? Because if I don't feel fulfilled in my day-to-day life, and if my quality of life is bad, right, throughout my day-to-day life, what's the point, right? If I have to suffer through my day-to-day life, like, I'm not going to feel fulfilled, right? If I have to hide who I truly am, if I can't live my true self, especially when I'm doing the things that I love, right? When I'm competing, when I'm training, right? If I can't feel the most comfortable that I can in those positions, then, like, what am I doing all this for, right? Like, what am I living for, right? I love talking about other trans people finding their purpose after they become trans, because oftentimes when we live our true selves and when we find our true selves, finding the rest feels so much easier, right? Now that I've transitioned and now that I've reached a spot where I feel comfortable in myself, I don't need to cling to one sport to feel fulfilled with the rest of my life. I know that I can go anywhere else, or I can do anything else that I want to, right? And I can succeed wherever I want to, because I'm living my truth. And through myself living my truth, everybody else around me is living theirs, right? Like, there's been so many people that migrate down to Austin and migrate into our gym, and that, like, experience this community and experience finding themselves for the first time. And they're like, oh my God, like, I feel at home and I feel safe and I feel happy because I found these people that make me live my true self.
Yeah. I mean, I think that just, like, it goes to show, when you live in alignment, things line up for you. It's like you finally found, like, an authentic way to live. And then it's like the things just happen. Like, look at all the things that you're doing now that are so amazing, because you're in alignment with who you are. It's so awesome. It's so incredible. It really is.
Yeah. My parents used to tell me all the time, like, don't chase happiness, it'll come to you.
Mm-hmm.
But what I want to, like, reframe that to is, like, don't chase happiness, go chase your happiness, because your happiness is seeking you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your happiness is already on its way to you. You just got to go find it, right? It's out there. It's already existing. You just have to go find what you need. It's about you, right? And if somebody else crosses a boundary with you, and if somebody else makes a mistake with you, that's not on you. That's on them. And you have a conversation and you say, okay, let's learn, let's become friends, and let's educate, right? Because every time that somebody makes a mistake, right, as long as I'm living my true self, I feel affirmed when they correct that mistake, right? I feel affirmed when they go back and they say, okay, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that thing, right? Because that means that they're taking the steps to not only help me live my true self, but they're taking the steps to maybe look inside themselves and say, do I need something? Right. And that's more important than anything else.
Yeah. I would love to talk briefly. I'm sure people ask you about Queer Eye all the time. What an amazing, I mean, that's how I saw you. And I was like, oh my God, she needs to be on my podcast. Because your story is just so, it's amazing. And I love that you're representing the trans community in fitness. I would love to know, like, how that experience changed you, I guess, or maybe change isn't the right word, but, like, how it has affected your life.
I think that anyone would train a lot differently if they knew they were a role model for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like there was already like kind of the weight of the world on my shoulders before, but now it's going into training and knowing that like my existence helps other people live their truth, right? Seeing
Yeah.
me helps other people find what they need, right? And so really I could say anything from like the skincare routine to the clothing and understanding fashion and makeup and everything. And my hair is gorgeous and I work with Jonathan all the time and it's great. But like in truth, it's not about any of the material things. It's about the fact that I can be that role model for so many people, that I can have the 10-year-old trans girl from Chicago that I love so very much to like DM me on Instagram and be like, I watched your episode and I've never had a role model like you. Right. And I can sit there and I can cry about it and I can laugh about it and I can be happy about it, because that is so much more powerful than a medal around my neck or a name in a record book or a number on a screen or a weight on a bar. Right. Like I could be standing on the CrossFit Games podium in 2 years, but it's not going to matter, because what's important is the fact that that person in the front row is cheering for me.
Yeah.
And that person in the front row looks up to me, and that person in the front row wants to be like me someday.
Yeah.
And that's more important than anything else.
What a like beautiful outcome. You know, I'm at a loss for words, honestly, because it's so cool. And I'm so honored to be able to have you and talk to you and hear about your experience and all the things that you're doing now. I think the fitness community really needs somebody like you. I mean, the world needs somebody like you, but fitness.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. So what's next for you? Like, what do you have planned from here? What is you said earlier in the podcast, you know, before, you never really thought about the future, and then you found out how to live your truth. So now you see your future, and what does that look like?
It's all over the place, honestly. Like I have a lot of, I'm having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I have a lot of fun in powerlifting.
Mm-hmm.
But I think something about me misses kind of that like stadium feel that like football used to bring. And like, I kind of miss, with like all these new opportunities coming my way and with like being able to work with larger names and to work with larger brands, it definitely opens up more time in the future for me to like put things aside that don't need to necessarily be focused on right now and focus on my own athletic career, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then be able to combine that with the activism and do it all at the same time would be perfect. Yeah. So with that, like powerlifting's nice. I think that I would love to try and make a run of the games.
Yeah.
And I would love to try and make a run at you know, being the fit is something at least.
Oh my God. I am so here for that. I love it.
Then like my thought is like, and like not to be like nerdy about the games, but like I've seen every single documentary and I've like spent so much time, but like it's
Same.
like like Tia and Matt both had extensive weightlifting experience prior to like starting any sort of CrossFit, anything. Mm-hmm. And like I have extensive weightlifting experience and powerlifting experience. And so with that, I'm already experimenting with things like gymnastics, and I've done gymnastics in the past. And improving those skills is just going to be like a flip of a switch and focusing my training and then working for endurance. And I'm looking at all of it. And like I said, like the possibilities are just endless. Right. It's like, it's funny. Like I said before that, like, once I transitioned, the possibilities opened up. When I saw the Queer Eye episode air and everything changed, all of a sudden more possibilities opened up where I'm looking at it and I'm looking at things on the screen and I'm like, I can be that. Right. You know, like, and I was that, you know, so why can't I be that? You know, like I was already on the screen for something else. I want to be on the screen for what I really want to do. Right. And what I really, really want to be. And then I look at the challenges of like CrossFit training and endurance running and trail running and swimming and biking. And I want to be good at all of it. Yeah. Because like for the first time in my entire life, feel like I can truly master everything. Yeah. Because I'm living my true self.
It's incredible. Like that, the confidence is just exudes like when anybody really is living the way that they want to live and living as who they are and it's authentic, like it's amazing the confidence that comes out of that. So I mean, it's really cool that you're like, before there was like, there's no future. And now like your future is literally, you said like, it's limitless. Like it's endless. You could do all these things. Like what a beautiful outlook on like your life in the future, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, like I can do anything. So I could stay in powerlifting if I want. I could do nationals this year and be like, I don't want to quit the sport. I could come back in a year and say like, maybe weightlifting is more for me again. Like maybe I want to go try a larger weightlifting competition. Like maybe I want to go like shoot for something better. Right. It's just everything's open to me again.
Yeah.
For the first time. Like everything's truly, truly open to me. And I'm happy for it.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
I'm so excited and happy for you. Is there anything that you would like to educate our listeners on, that maybe there's like a specific misconception or something that a lot of people don't know that they should know?
I just want to reinforce for everybody that like every single trans athlete that approaches competition and approaches sport isn't out here trying to cheat, right? We're not going to training and leaving training knowing that we're unbeatable and going to competition just so we can like put a medal around our neck, right? Because every single trans athlete that I've ever known is the greatest sportsman I've ever known, right? Because I've never seen an athlete that's so like set on winning but so okay with losing, right? Like I myself, like I would be ecstatic if I won something, right? But every time another woman beats me in competition, that's further affirmation for me that not only do I have to work harder, but that I am not a man, right? I'm not this unbeatable male thing in front of you. Like, no, I'm a woman just like the person that beat me in front of me, right? So when you go into competition against trans athletes, I don't want anybody to look at us as unbeatable. I want you to look at us as just another athlete along the line, right? Like you're going to glance down and see that we're keeping up with you, not the other way around, right? That we are trying our best to not only seek excellence for ourselves, but uplift everybody else around us along the way, because that's what's more important than any other medal.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's fantastic. I feel like an idiot trying to talk to you because I don't even know how to respond, because I just love everything you're saying so much that I don't even like have a proper sentence to say back. But I love it. It's so good. I'm so excited to have you, and really, really honored to be able to share your story and spread your mission. So we can wrap this up. I want to thank you so much for being here today. So grateful.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Sure. It's been a really good conversation. It's really nice to have my voice heard finally.
100%. And I'm glad that we were able to give you another way to do that. And I can't wait to watch you continue doing what you're doing and growing and kicking ass. Thank you so much for being on today.
No, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Move More, Worry Less. If you love this episode, please subscribe, share, rate, or review us to help us grow our mission. If you don't already, follow us on social at 13fit Apparel and visit our website at www.13fitapparel.com. Thanks for listening.